Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, January 13th, 2017. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by Bucknuts contributor Brandon Castel. B-Cast, welcome in on this Friday the 13th, my friend.
Hey, buddy. Good to be on. Excited to talk with you as always.
Yeah, let's start with Torrance Gibson. Obviously didn't work out the way anybody at Ohio State wanted it to. I feel like him transferring to Cincinnati, I know he's going to go to Cincinnati State for a while. Until he gets his associate's degree. And if he does that, he'll be eligible right away for the Bearcats this fall. I feel good for Luke Fickell. I feel good for Torrance Gibson because he's going to move back to quarterback. I do feel bad for Ohio State, though. Urban Meyer did everything in his power to keep him at Ohio State, even spoke out. Brandon, as you know, when Torrance was suspended, it was very rare for Urban to speak out against Ohio State, but he spoke out against him, said he was not a fan of the suspension. But just your reaction to everything that happened with Torrance and Torrance ending up at Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, obviously there was something going on there with, the university making a decision about Torrance that Urban Meyer didn't agree with. And it seems like from everything we know and have heard, that Urban wanted him to be a part of this football team. The fact that they do have a void at receiver, they have not been able to find kind of that big play guy who can stretch the field, or really even a guy who can consistently make plays. And, obviously we could spend the rest of the show talking about all the issues that they had offensively, but would have been a nice piece. But, honestly, even going back to kind of the beginning of his career, to me, Torrance Gibson always kind of felt like a little bit of a tease to Ohio State fans, to Urban Meyer maybe, a guy who had some offers to play, at Miami and Auburn and some other places, LSU, to potentially go play receiver, but had come to Ohio State, hoping to play quarterback, and then kind of moved to receiver just really to get on the field. And, we did see some good things. He had a couple big plays in the spring game. We've seen him make a few plays in practice, and I saw enough there to think maybe that he could be kind of a big play kind of guy. But it just never seemed. I always felt like it was just out of reach for him and for Ohio State for some reason. And so I think maybe the reset will be good for him, going to play for Luke Fickell. Obviously, I think that's just a perfect situation for him instead of ending up at, a random junior college and then opening his recruitment and ending up, somewhere else. I think going to a familiar territory, and I think that giving him a chance to play quarterback is probably a great decision by Luke, to get an athlete of that caliber. I'm sure that was part of the reason he opted to head down 71 and play for the Bearcats.
Yeah, hopefully it works out well for him. He was always a nice kid every time I talked to him, and you could argue maybe he was misguided at times, but I'm telling you, he was always a nice young man, and he's a kid, and I wish him well. And I'm happy for Luke Fickell that he's getting a talent like that at Cincinnati, a rare talent that they'll see down there. Let's move on and talk about Kevin Wilson. I haven't spoken with you since that was made official earlier this week. I love this. As everybody who listens to the show knows, I've been screaming from the rooftops for weeks that I want Kevin Wilson as Ohio State's next offensive coordinator, so I love that came to fruition. Talk about that, just him coming aboard, and what impact do you think Kevin Wilson can have immediately for this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think you couldn't have asked from an impact standpoint, from a philosophy and X's and O's ability to run an offense standpoint. I mean, you couldn't have dreamt up a better situation, especially after what Ohio State has gone through really the last 2 years of obviously having a really, really good position coach in Ed Warner, moving into that role, bringing in a guy in Tim Beck, and it just didn't work. And really, I look back and say there just wasn't enough creativity. There just wasn't enough innovation. You couldn't run the same things over and over and over again and think they were going to work. And we saw a lot of that. And it kind of felt like, at the end of the day, Urban, it's Urban's offense, but he almost needs somebody who can sit down in a room or even on game day and come up with something creative and kind of push him outside of the boundaries and make him stretch a little bit because, at heart, he's going to go back to running the power football. And put the ball in the hands of his quarterback. So I think this is a great hire from an X's and O's standpoint. I look for an immediate impact. Obviously everyone knows that what he did at Oklahoma, back in, I think, 2009, they're one of only 3 teams, in the last, I think, about decade that have averaged over 50 points per game. So we know that this guy can call plays. Actually, the 08 Oklahoma offense was one of only 3 offenses to average over 50 points per game. We saw what he did at Indiana, and I think you and I obviously have been around long enough and covered enough football to know that if you can put together the kind of offenses that he did at Indiana, I know we were pretty shocked when they let him go, and there's some stuff with potentially with a rift there, that you have to look at. But from an X's and O's standpoint, he was really putting Indiana on the map a little bit. And I look at, what he did, and really his 6 years there was pretty impressive from an offensive standpoint. I think I did a little research on that. In his first year at Indiana, they were 11th in the Big Ten. And I believe last season they were all the way up to first. So, and that's a pretty impressive turnaround at Indiana. Now imagine what he can do with, Urban Meyer and with the athletes that he's got at Ohio State. There's going to have to be some things that get corrected. I didn't think the offensive line was great. The quarterback play was shaky. There's got to be some development there. Receivers have to emerge. Kevin Wilson can't come in and be a magician and get everybody to do their jobs and to take their game to the next level. But if these guys can progress, you've got the right guy to really open the offense up, to get back to kind of the explosiveness we saw, and really, I think, get back to what Urban likes to do when he's kind of being pushed outside the box, which is stretch the field vertically, stretch the field horizontally, get the kind of misdirection going, really put the defense on its heels. I don't think we've seen that in a couple of years, and so I think, this will be a kind of a good refresh for Urban and for this team.
The Buckeyes have 6 early entries to the NFL draft a year after having 9. This was supposed to be the year they weren't going to lose too many guys, and they lose 6 early entry guys. I want to focus on middle linebacker. I think a lot of the other spots, we can kind of maybe opine who's going to fill in there. For example, I think with Curtis Samuel, Damari McCall is going to fit right in there, and safety with filling for Malik Hooker. Jordan Fuller's probably going to fill in there. If not him, Eric Smith at corner. You have Denzel Ward. You have Sheffield and Arnett. Wide receiver, you have Victor taking over for Brown. But at middle linebacker, BCAS, I'm looking over this roster. I cannot peg who's going to be the next middle linebacker. Maybe it's Tuff Borland. Maybe it's Justin Hilliard. Maybe it's Nick Connor. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's an incoming freshman. If you had to bet right now, who do you think is going to be the starting middle linebacker on the 2017 Buckeyes?
Yeah, it's a great question because Raekwon has played so much football and has been such a steady force for them now for the last few years that there really hasn't been kind of that, mixing in of who the next guy is going to be. It's been pretty much just Raekwon. And so, you've got the highly recruited guys and Nick Connors and the Justin Hilliards. The one guy that I kind of see fitting into that role, I think that could really kind of solidify the defense next year is Dante Booker. I know he's traditionally been kind of that will linebacker. Yeah, I know he's been an outside guy. He was the will linebacker at the start of this season. That's probably his best position. But the fact that Jerome Baker came on and became really one of the top stars on this defense and really emerged, I think, as probably the top guy coming back next year in terms of a playmaker, a guy who's going to be all over the field. They're not going to take Jerome Baker off the football field, and I think you and I both know that. So that leaves a big question mark of what are you going to do with Dante Booker? He's a former Ohio Mr. Football. He's a guy we've seen make plays and play in a limited role. I just think it makes sense, even though you're only going to get, a limited amount of time, you're really only going to get a year out of Dante Booker. If you can move him over and you can have Chris Worley, you can have Jerome Baker, and you can have Dante Booker for at least one season, I think you've got something there. And this is a kid who racked up a ton of tackles in high school, played inside, played outside. I think that, to me, he's the most natural fit. If he's healthy and you've got everybody kind of ready to go, that would make the most sense to me. And then you've got to start getting some of these other guys, whether it's Justin Hilliard, whether it's Connor, whether it's Borland, you got to get one of these other guys ready to go because you're going to need somebody the year after that.
I like it. You've convinced me already. I think that's the best candidate. He's going to be a fourth-year junior. He's big and physical enough, and the outside linebackers, as you mentioned, are set with Chris Worley coming back as a fifth-year senior, Jerome Baker coming back as a junior, and that'll probably be his last year. He'll go pro after his junior year. I would think he is that good. I like the idea of a veteran and fourth-year junior Dante Booker taking over in the middle. Very good call on your part. And we'll see. Maybe other guys, I'm sure other guys will be in the mix like Tough Borland and some of those other guys, but I like that idea. Hey, real quick before I let you go, BCast, let's talk some Ohio State basketball. Another loss for these guys, man. They got blown out last night at Wisconsin. Wisconsin, to me, is the best team in the Big Ten, but still, it was 89-66, and that final score has actually made it look better than what that game really was. I mean, they just got blown away from the opening tip. They're now 0-4 in Big Ten play, and I appreciate everything that Thad Matta has done for this team and this school, but it feels like the end is near, and I've asked other people this. Do you feel like, when I say the end is near, do you think the end is near, meaning after this season? Do you think that is done after this season, if you had to predict right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question because I've seen so many good years during Thad's tenure at Ohio State and so many things that I think Ohio State fans were not used to during their history of following the program. And there have been some really dark years. People go back to some of the years of Randy Ayers and even, with O'Brien, and there were some good years mixed in, but there were some dark days as well. And so I think, Thad really did bring the program back around, and obviously, taking them to the national championship game and bringing in guys who were just incredibly fun to watch, incredibly productive, guys who are playing in the NBA now with Mike Conley and Evan Turner and a lot of the other guys that we've seen kind of come through the program, the Jared Sullingers, D'Angelo Russells. I mean, those guys, when was the last time we could name that many guys from Ohio State who are playing in the NBA and who are at least, contributing or if not on the verge of stardom in the NBA? So it's hard to see this happen with Thad, but I do think there's a legitimate chance that this could be his last season. If not this season, then maybe at the end of the year he would announce that next season is going to be his last season. I don't think they're going to push him out at this point. He's done too much for the program. He's too well liked, too loved around the university, in my opinion. I can't imagine that they're going to just pull the plug like that. But I think that Thad probably senses, with his health issues, with where the program's at. I go back to me, the big line that I remember that kind of stuck out in my mind was back in July when he mentioned that quote that he was tired of the BS. He wanted to go back to coaching basketball, going back to running the program the way he did when he first got to Ohio State. And that was in reference to a lot of those guys who left, Austin Grandstaff, Daniel Giddens, Mickey Mitchell, A.J. Harris. I think that, to me, signaled that something was broken in the program. When you have that many kids leave and the coach is talking about kind of good riddance, we got rid of the guys we needed to get rid of. The teams have just not clicked for a few years now. I mean, they did a lot when they had D'Angelo Russell because he's an emerging star in the NBA, but they haven't clicked for a few years. He's not able to go out and recruit and really get involved the way that he has historically. I think the end is near. That's hard for me to say because I've always been a Thad guy, like covering Thad, for the time that he was there, the time that he's been there. But, I think he will announce it either at the end of this year or kind of next year is going to be the last year, something like that. But, I can't imagine him being around for too much longer unless there's some kind of dramatic change that I can't envision at this point.
Great stuff as always out of Brandon Castel. Really appreciate your insights, my friend. And thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Let's hear some Buckeye swag. Best damn band in the land.